One of the most important things that has a bearing on your race performance is your race day nutrition and hydration. In race situations, it is very easy to get caught up in the heat of the race, trying to follow wheels and trying to maintain position in the group, etc., and forget completely to eat and drink until it is too late and you end up bonking. It helps to have simple rules like one of the common mistakes those who are new to racing do is taking too long or too hard pulls when they are at the front. We will do well to remember that there are no medals for riding the hardest and temper our efforts and use them efficiently. I am Venki, a working professional in IT as well as an amateur masters athlete and a coach for endurance sports. You are listening to the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, I have a small request from you. Please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also let me know what you like and what you would like to listen to more of by commenting in the comment section on YouTube. I promise to do my best to improve with each episode and bring you the best content that helps you and me get better each day. This episode is brought to you by The Bike Affair. If you are in search of a one-stop destination that caters to all your cycling needs, our today's sponsor, The Bike Affair, is the perfect place to check out. I have known the founders of The Bike Affair, Krish and Gokul, personally for nearly 15 years now. In fact, my first century ride was with Krish back in 2008. They are both exceptional human beings and entrepreneurs that believe in providing exceptional service to their customers. And it shows. With over 14 years of experience, the Bike Affair has established itself as a trusted source offering honest advice and exceptional service. They are offering a special treat for the listeners of this podcast. You can enjoy a 10% discount on your first order by using the code BikeyVenki on their website. So if you are in Hyderabad, visit their store in Kondapur, or if you are anywhere else in India, shop online by using the link thebikeaffair.com. I will leave the link in the show notes. Now, enjoy the podcast. In this episode, let us talk about the common mistakes during races and what we can do to avoid them. With the 160-kilometer BBCH Classic race coming up next week, it is a good time to remind ourselves of some of the common mistakes we tend to do in long races and how to avoid them. The first one that comes to mind is not eating or drinking enough. One of the most important things that has a bearing on your race performance is your race day nutrition and hydration. In race situations, it is very easy to get caught up in the heat of the race, trying to follow wheels and trying to maintain position in the group, etc., and forget completely to eat and drink until it is too late and you end up bonking. It helps to have simple rules like drinking and or eating every 10 to 15 minutes so that you have a continuous supply of energy. But say you remember to drink or eat at regular intervals, can you still end up eating or drinking too little? Yes, it is possible. Typically, depending on your body weight and calorific needs, you need to consume about 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour on race day. That is 240 to 360 kilocalories per hour. These days, pros go up to 120 grams per hour or more. That is a whopping 480 calories or more per hour. You can't simply have those many calories on a race day. You have to try during your hard intervals or race simulation rides and figure out what fuel and how much of that fuel works best for you.
It is important to remember that the energy expenditure and hence the energy needs depend on the intensity of your effort. So, what you eat or drink during on a leisurely ride won't be nearly enough during a race effort. While I have mentioned the guideline amounts, experiment and figure out what works best for you. That was about nutrition during the race. The second one is trying something new on a race day. It is very important to not try something new on a race day. We just spoke about not trying 90 grams of carbs during race if you have not built up to it. Just because I told you you need 90 grams of carbs during a race, you can't just go from 30 grams to 90 grams in a day. The system will most probably revolt and throw it out back out. You have to try and get your system used to higher or different fueling strategy over a period of time before trying it in a race. It is not just with the quantity of the fuel but also with the quality and the brand of fuel you use that you would need to try and figure out well before the race day. Not just the nutrition, it is a good idea not to try anything new on a race day that you haven't already tried in practice. Some of us tend to make changes to the bike setup the day of the race. It is usually not a good idea to change your bike setup just on the race day without checking it before if it works for you. It can end up in a poor performance or worse, injuries. Another common mistake that we tend to do, especially when we are new to the sport, is being over enthusiastic and burning out. At the start of a race, everyone feels like a superhero. That's why the start of the most races tend to be super hard. We tend to overexert ourselves, especially at the start of a long race. One of the common mistakes those who are new to racing do is taking too long or too hard pulls when they are at the front. We will do well to remember that there are no medals for riding the hardest and temper our efforts and use them efficiently. A 160-kilometer race like BBCH Classic takes anywhere between 4 to 6 hours to finish. We will do well to remember the likely duration of the race and plan our efforts, hydration, and nutrition accordingly. Long races are usually races of attrition. Those who have good fitness levels do well, but more importantly, those who are patient conserve their energy to utilize that at the right moment to do well in such races. Another important thing that comes to mind is not tapering well for a race. Assuming your training for the race went well, it is always a good idea to taper well for your A race. 1 or 2 weeks of taper after a couple of hard cycles of race specific training will do wonders for your race day performance. What I call a good taper is keeping the intensity going but cutting the volume out by about 40% of your peak week. For example, your typical hard week has 10 hours of training with various intervals thrown in. You can do about 6 hours of training, keeping some of those intense intervals going to recover optimally and be raring to go during the race. Tapering can be hard for most because it feels risky and it feels like we are going to lose all the fitness gains we have made over the last few training cycles. But it pays to be patient and do this right for a good race day performance. All right, we talked about the day of the race and also a bit of tapering and stuff that in the weeks before the race. So it is a good idea to also talk about taking care of nutrition and hydration in the days leading up to the race. As important as the race day nutrition and hydration is, we should not neglect the nutrition and hydration in the days leading up to the race. We should be well fed with good quality food and good hydration in the days leading up to the race, especially the day before. It is a good idea to eat simple carb based food with some fiber but not too much fiber. For me personally, I tend to avoid eating anything difficult to digest the day before the race to make sure my tummy has no troubles in the morning. Typically, some dal chawal with some veggies tend to be my carb loading on the day before. On the morning of the race, typically about 3 hours before the start, I tend to have a big bowl of overnight oats with fruit and nuts to keep me going for the initial hours of the race. Those are the few things that I can think of right away. Hope they are helpful for your next big race. Drop me your thoughts, comments, and questions in the comment section in YouTube. I will try to address those in the upcoming episodes of the podcast. Thank you for watching and see you next week in another episode.